Hey guys, it's Chloe. Welcome back or welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm out here in Ocotillo, California in the desert to test out one of the latest mods I have on my truck, and that is Fox 2.5 Race Series shocks. I recently installed these front and rear shocks on my Tacoma, and this is my first time really testing them out off-road. They are marketed as high-quality off-road race shocks, so we're gonna go on as many different terrains as we can here in Ocotillo and see if they perform better than the stock shocks. Really quick before we get moving, I do a lot of mods and off-road videos for my Tacoma, so feel free to subscribe if you want. Now let's go get this truck dirty. So I first want to quickly talk about my Tacoma build because there are obviously a lot of factors on the truck besides the shocks that are going to affect its performance here in the desert. So first off, I have a 2019 TRD Off-Road Tacoma, and it's a 4-wheel drive 6-speed automatic. My truck is lifted to 1.25 inches in the front, so there's a little bit of extra ground clearance in the front, but more so the effect that doing this lift has caused is that it compressed the springs a little bit, which means that my suspension is going to help keep the front of my truck up higher when I'm going through bumps and whoops in the sand. If you're curious on more specifics on my suspension, I do have a couple of videos here on the channel where I showed you guys a step-by-step install of these shocks in my garage, and I talked about why I decided to lift the front of my truck, so you can check them out if you're interested. I'll have them linked down below. Another mod that is arguably going to have the most significant impact on performance here in the desert are my aftermarket tires. They're 265/70 R17 BF Goodrich KO2s, which are wider than the stock Goodyear Wranglers, so that always helps in sand. These BF Goodrich tires are well known for their tread pattern, which give more traction in the sand than the stock tires do, and pretty much with any other all-terrain tire out there with an aggressive tread pattern, you're gonna get more traction in terrains like this. Now I run my tires at around 32 to 34 psi on road, but here I aired them down to 20. I know I could have gone lower, but my air compressor setup is this small battery powered Makita inflator, which I love for its compact size on trips, and I don't have very big tires anyways, but it does take some time to air back up, so I'm working on a really new cool setup and getting a new air compressor soon, so stay tuned for that mod. Besides aftermarket shocks and tires, my truck is pretty much stock performance-wise. So I'm gonna do my best here to describe how the Fox shocks feel in comparison to the stock Bilstein Toyota off-road shocks as best I can as I go through a couple of different terrains here in the desert. I never really put my stock Bilstein shocks through a rigorous test in sand whoops, so I can't say too much about their performance. Every time I went through whoops with these old shocks, I just drove at a slower speed, somewhat in caution of bottoming out and potentially doing some damage, because this type of terrain can easily wear down your suspension. On the other hand, with these Fox shocks though, I did push their performance a little bit, or went harder than I normally do. Through these whoops, I was going anywhere from 15 to 25 or 30 miles an hour, and while this may not sound that fast, there's a limitation with how fast I could go over these because the truck isn't a trophy truck or a razor, and going too fast will cause you to jump your truck. And lucky for you guys, the drone caught my truck having a split second of airtime because of me misjudging my speed and the size of these whoops. But anyways, by going relatively fast, or as fast as I could without doing another baby jump, these Fox shocks really did ride amazing. Obviously over this terrain you're still gonna feel bumps, but the shocks do a great job of compression and controlling the dampening and don't feel rough. While off-roading with these Fox shocks really did feel superior in pretty much every terrain as compared to the stock shocks, when you're pushing your truck to test its capability off-road, it's hard to show on video, but you really just feel that there's a clear difference and there's just more you can do, and that's really the extra abilities that you get out of your truck from these shocks. Now don't get me wrong, I was and definitely still am a big advocate of getting out on the trails in a stock Tacoma because they are highly capable, and sure, the stock shocks could have done what I was doing here, but it would have been a much rougher ride, and the wider steel Fox shocks are just a more durable shock. There are patches of washboard roads scattered throughout Ocotillo, and my truck is very familiar with this kind of service. Being in Southern California, a lot of trails I end up on or fire roads are washboard roads, so I've been able to do my fair share of testing the Bilstein stock shocks at both low and high speeds on these, so I do have a bit of a reference point here for comparison. Now, like I said before, while your tires do play a huge role in whatever kind of terrain you're on, these washboard roads notoriously put your suspension through a lot of stress because of the rapid up and down motion that your shocks have to go through, especially when you go at high speed. To me, the Fox shocks just feel better tuned for this kind of terrain than the stock shocks do, and they just provide more of a comfortable ride at higher speeds. And while I don't think I was ever really at risk for pushing the stock Bilstein shocks too far on this kind of terrain to the point where they would overheat, the Fox shocks are almost an inch wider in diameter, which means they hold more fluid and can cool better, which just means they and any other wider shock have a lower chance of heating up and failing. Having remote reservoirs also allows the shocks to hold more fluid and cool even better. Now again, this is another terrain where the tires are going to have a great effect, but the shocks do still play a role. But here, I'd say there wasn't too much of a difference between the stock shocks and the Bilstein shocks since they weren't going through a lot of compression, and the key to soft sand is really just keeping up your momentum and what kind of tires you have and what air pressure you're running them at. I was actually going through some soft sand to purposely get myself stuck by putting my truck in two-wheel drive to 1, test out the crawl control feature, and 2, test out some new traction boards that a company called DV8 sent me. As I was performing my test though, a couple of good Samaritans actually thought we were stuck and drove over to help.
These other Toyotas, I think we actually got. Hey, come here. Purposely got stuck to test these out.
How do they work?
I don't know. We're gonna put them in. We put it in two-wheel drive. Sorry.
Oh, that's alright. I hope you guys are having fun.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm testing them out, so I put my truck in two-wheel drive.
I like it.
Yeah. So now we're shoveling out. And,
Okay.
yeah, I appreciate the help
Not a
though.
problem.
Same color truck.
Have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
And this is why the off-road community is amazing. These guys went out of their way and stopped what they were doing and drove all the way over to me and my buddy Kyle to make sure we, who were complete strangers to them, were okay. So to the 2nd gen red Tacoma, Jeep, and my silver 3rd gen twin, if you're watching this, you guys rock, and I hope I run into you guys on the trails again. Also, I was able to get out with my traction boards, but that's for another video.